Hello and welcome to a special Memorial Day edition of the Michigan Military Technical and Historical Society COVID-19 shutdown videos. It is Memorial Day weekend. Normally the museum would be open and participating in services to honor America's fallen heroes, but we are closed right now, so I wanted to take this opportunity to take a look at a couple items, 3 items to be exact, in the museum collection that belong to service members who were killed in the line of duty. The first item here belonged to Private John G. Ivanoff, and it was his footlocker, which is here in the museum. Private Ivanoff was born in 1921 and lived in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And on October 15th, 1940, he enlisted in the Michigan's 32nd Division. Private John G., the Mad Russian Ivanoff. The 32nd Division went off to Louisiana for training. Camp Beauregard and Camp Livingston, Louisiana, as you can see, is referenced on the top of Private Ivanoff's footlocker. Private Ivanoff was a cook in the signal company of the 32nd Division. And these are some of the items that were in the footlocker when it came to the museum. Give you an idea of what a 20-year-old might have been keeping in their footlocker. Private Ivanoff was involved in an accident, a motor accident, on May 15th, 1941, where he was then transferred to the hospital at Camp Livingston and died of his injuries. Interesting to note here that America's involvement in the war in Pearl Harbor were still 177 days away. So Private Ivanoff was not killed in a time of war, but he was killed while in the service nonetheless. Stop here and give you an opportunity to look at the postcard or the telegram that was sent to Private Ivanoff's family informing them of his death. Definitely not much in the way of empathy here, very to the point. This is what you would have received from the Army. Some other items from Private Ivanoff's footlocker. There's a yard long of the 32nd Division Signal Company. Aerial photograph of the Camp Livingston, Louisiana training area. This is the part of the training area that was assigned to the 32nd Division at Camp Livingston. And so we can assume that somewhere within the confines of this photo is where Private Ivanoff was when he passed away. And down here, some of the items that were in there as well: his tie, his garrison cap, empty bandolier, and some spent brass, 30-06. And then since Private Ivanoff was a cook, he would have been responsible for preparing bills of fare like this one. It was also in the footlocker. So there's a meal that he prepared, and then down here at the bottom, where he signed off on the bill of fare. So there's Private Ivanoff's signature. And so with that, we honor Private Ivanoff for his service and his sacrifice. So here's another item from the museum collection. This item came to the collection because of this gentleman, Cecil Pendray, Cecil Charles Pendray of Highland Park. He did survive the war, but there was people in this photograph that did not. So this is the crew of B-24J 44-40460 from the 861st Squadron. This aircraft was named Wong Long Hop and was shot down. The aircraft was shot down on June 14th, 1944, while on a bombing raid over the Louhans airfield in France. The After successfully completing the raid, the aircraft suffered an explosion which rendered 3 of its 4 engines useless, and the aircraft began to lose altitude. The pilot, which is this gentleman here, whose name is Second Lieutenant Floyd Addy, who was actually from California, not from Michigan, but the Second Lieutenant Addy ordered his crew to bail out, and the crew bailed out. And as Lieutenant Addy was preparing to bail out, he realized that the aircraft was heading directly towards the town of Chevers, Belgium. So Lieutenant Addy stayed with the aircraft and managed to fly the aircraft so that it crashed into a field outside of town. It didn't actually strike the town. The rest of the crew survived. The Michigan native here ended up as a prisoner of war in Stalag Luft 4 and remained a prisoner and was repatriated to back to the States in June of 1945 and came back to Michigan and lived out his life. Lieutenant Addy died in the crash and is actually buried in France, in Belgium. And the people of the town every year on June 14th actually have a memorial for Second Lieutenant Addy, and because they know that he sacrificed his life, stayed with the aircraft, so that the aircraft would not hit the actual populated town. So there's your American hero who died in the line of duty, saving other people. So the last item we're going to look at, and I believe this is, personally, I think this is one of the saddest items that we have in the museum collection, is this envelope. Unfortunately, we don't have the letter or the card that was in the envelope. We just have the envelope. But this envelope, just by looking at it, you can tell tells a fairly substantial story. This envelope was mailed from a post office here in Detroit on 14 December 1943 and was going to Staff Sergeant Vincent Sweet. As you can kind of surmise from all of the markings all over this envelope, this letter or card never made it to Sergeant Sweet. So you have the Christmas themed envelope on the back and the Christmas theme on the front, and you can imagine that this Christmas letter or card was dropped in the mail by a member of Sergeant Sweet's family with happy thoughts, and returned to them with great sadness. So Sergeant Sweet was flying in B-24, serial number 4240990, of the 93rd Bomb Group, 328th Bomber Squadron. The aircraft was nicknamed On the Ball. Sergeant Sweet was a waist gunner on board this aircraft. They were on a bombing mission of the Krupp factory near Ludwigshafen, Germany, on January 7th, 1944. The incident report from the Army Air Corps records indicates that the number 2 and number 3 engines were on fire. The bomber fell out of formation, and the pilot ordered the evacuation of the aircraft. The engineer, radio operator, and pilot bailed out together. The navigator jumped last, and unfortunately the 2 waist gunners and the ball turret gunner did not make it out of the aircraft. The report indicated the ball turret gunner was trapped in the ball turret, and perhaps the 2 waist gunners were trying to extricate him. I guess no one will know that for sure, because that story went down with the aircraft. French authorities discovered the 3 bodies in the wreckage of the aircraft, where they were interred in the Saint-Chiron cemetery on January 10th, 1944. The remainder of the crew, pilot, were able to actually escape and evade and made it back to safety. But the waist gunner, Vincent Sweet of Detroit, Michigan, was killed in action. Waist gunner Elmer Kudej was killed in action, and ball turret gunner John J. Steinker were killed in action. So this is definitely one of the saddest things I think that we have in the collection. A very simple item, but a very sad story. And this is the original envelope that we normally keep in the archives. We have this, our B-24 display. We keep this panel out, talking about, the sadder aspects of the bomber war over Europe. So with that, I'm going to say, everybody take a moment and think about all the men and women who have been killed in action or killed in service of this nation. And remember, that's what this weekend and this day is really about. So everybody stay safe and have a solemn Memorial Day.